In a world suffering 2 wars and multiple armed conflicts, where does the Quad figure? It's an anti-China group that has evolved in fits and starts, often shy of stating its purpose and being dismissed as a talk shop. But tonight we want to begin the show with the latest Quad summit, because while world leaders try to solve today's problems, they must keep an eye on tomorrow's threat, and that is, beyond doubt, China. So the strategy to counter it must be worked upon, and that's what happened over this weekend. After much back and forth, the Quad summit finally took place. India was supposed to host this one, but it ended up switching turns with the US. Quad leaders met on Saturday in Delaware, which is Joe Biden's hometown, and this was his farewell meeting. Like I said, through the years, the Quad has struggled to define itself and its purpose. It has 4 members, the US, Australia, Japan and India. They came together to contain China, but they don't like to say it openly, especially when they're speaking to the press. Although behind closed doors, it's a different story. China tops the agenda. You don't have to take our word for it. Listen to this.
China continues to behave aggressively, testing us all across the region. And it's true in the South China Sea, the East China Sea, South Asia, and the Taiwan Straits.
As I'm sure you can tell, that was Joe Biden's voice. He was speaking to his Quad counterparts. Biden's statement got leaked. It was a hot mic moment. Journalists at the summit picked up this audio. They were inside the summit hall for the opening remarks, and just as they were about to leave, Joe Biden started talking. He did not realize that the media persons could still hear him. So China was the first item on the summit's agenda, as the US president said it himself. It dominated the joint statement too. As always, the statement doesn't name China, but it clearly targets it. The Quad is addressing Beijing's aggression directly. The joint statement highlights China's acts of aggression, specifically at 2 flashpoints, the East and the South China Sea. The Quad expressed concerns over the militarization of islands and the PLA's intimidation tactics, like the dangerous use of Coast Guard. Chinese ships keep ramming into Philippine vessels, and they keep engaging in dangerous maneuvers. Again, the Quad avoided any direct mention, but the language makes it fairly obvious. It's a condemnation of China's actions.
The security and environment surrounding ourselves has become increasingly severe, and a free international order based on the rule of law is under threat. Under this backdrop, it is ever more important for us, the Quad, to shared values such as freedom and democracy, to continue to demonstrate our firm commitment to our common vision of a free Indo-Pacific to the international community.
We've heard similar statements before, but here is what's different this time. The Quad is rolling out a series of moves aimed at keeping China in check, specifically on the high seas.
We're announcing a series of initiatives to deliver real, positive impact for the Indo-Pacific. That includes providing new maritime technologies to our regional partners so they know what's happening in their waters. Launching cooperation between coast guards for the first time.
The first focus area is protecting the coast. The Quad will undertake joint operations. All 4 members will be involved in this. These operations will take place in the Indo-Pacific. First, the US would host the Coast Guards from Australia, Japan and India. They'll train together on an American Coast Guard vessel. They'll also monitor the waters in the Indo-Pacific. Subsequently, every member will get to play host. Basically, the Quad is doing more joint operations to improve interoperability and to ensure maritime safety. The Quad is also expanding an existing pact, the Indo-Pacific Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness. I know it sounds complicated, but it's quite straightforward, really. This pact is to monitor the waters across the Indo-Pacific, track the region in real time. And the Quad is now expanding this agreement. Member countries will hold workshops, teach their personnel how to monitor and secure the waters, how to enforce rules and deter unlawful behavior. Under this plan, India will host the first Quad workshop next year. And that's not all. The group is looking to counter China in multiple ways, like imposing tariffs on some imports, cracking down on e-commerce shipments, and strengthening checks on the dumping of steel and aluminium. These are some forward-looking ideas. There are some forward-looking ideas too, like the Quad Ports of the Future Partnership. Ports of the Future Partnership. Like the name suggests, it will focus on shipping ports. The group wants to mobilize investments towards ports through both government financing and the private sector. The Quad says that it wants to promote, and I'm quoting, sustainable and resilient port infrastructure development. This could directly challenge Chinese investments and China's existing projects in the region, like the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka and the Gwadar port in Pakistan. It's an ambitious goal, but it all hinges on the execution. And on that front, the Quad is yet to spell out its plans. How will they do it? Having said that, this year's summit could be a turning point. It could reshape this alliance because finally, the Quad seems to be shedding its hesitation over China. It is taking bold and ambitious steps to contain Chinese expansionism. And it's trying to prove that it's more than an anti-China grouping. This time, they've announced what they're calling the Quad Cancer Moonshot, a new initiative to fight cancer, where Quad countries will pool their resources to prevent, detect, treat and alleviate cancer. They'll first focus on cervical cancer here, specifically cervical cancer vaccines. And India is making a big contribution towards this.
क्वाड मूनशॉट इनिशिएटिव के तहत $7.5 मिलियन के सैपलिंग किट्स, डिटेक्शन किट्स और वैक्सीन का सहयोग देने की घोषणा करता हूं। रेडियोथेरेपी ट्रीटमेंट और कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग में भी भारत सहयोग देगा।
The Quad also wants to work together on biotechnology and quantum computing. These are all small steps, but they give the Quad more heft. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the alliance is evolving.
Unlike some international forums, the Quad it doesn't have a long history. That means it's not defined by tradition, but it also means it's not confined by it. It means that as it develops, it can evolve. And that is, I believe, what is happening.
Joe Biden himself would be pleased with this outcome. It was his last Quad summit, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. Biden made a few goof-ups too. Take a look at this.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States.
Hello, hello, hello. By the way, that little thing up in the air there, thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
By the way, he's from a small country like ours, with low population, but he's become a good and decent man and a good friend.
Thank you.
Quad, will it survive regardless of the outcome?
Way beyond November.